Let's say you're flying from Singapore to Bangkok, hunting for the cheapest flight possible. You open your favorite travel app, filter by lowest price, and boom, Scoot or AirAsia pops up. Jetstar Asia, on the other hand, doesn't even show up anymore. After 2 decades of trying to make budget flying work across Asia, Jetstar has finally thrown in the towel. On July 23, 2024, Qantas officially announced it would be shutting down Jetstar Asia by early 2025. But how did this happen? How does an airline backed by Qantas, an aviation giant, get out-hustled in one of the busiest, most lucrative air travel regions on Earth? Well, buckle up, because the story of Jetstar's collapse in Asia isn't just about cheap fares and over-ambitious route maps. It's a story about strategy, competition, global crises, and what happens when your business model isn't built for the turbulence ahead. So let's take a look back. Jetstar Asia was born in 2004 during the golden age of budget airlines. Think Ryanair in Europe, Southwest in the US, and of course AirAsia, which was rapidly transforming air travel in Southeast Asia. Qantas saw what was happening and wanted in. But instead of just expanding their flights out of Australia, Qantas had something much bigger in mind: a full network of low-cost carriers spread across Asia. That vision led to the creation of Jetstar Asia in Singapore, Jetstar Pacific in Vietnam, Jetstar Japan, and of course, the main Jetstar brand operating in Australia and New Zealand. The idea was simple: build a pan-Asian empire of cheap flights under one umbrella, with Qantas pulling the strings. Jetstar Asia was set up with local partners like Singapore's Westbrook Investments and Japan's Mitsubishi Group. This helped with regulatory approvals and gave the illusion that each airline was domestically rooted. But even from the beginning, Jetstar Asia was different from the region's dominant players. For starters, they never really had the same kind of brand power as AirAsia or Scoot. If you were flying out of Singapore, Scoot was the hometown hero, backed by Singapore Airlines. AirAsia was a low-cost juggernaut with a magnetic CEO, Tony Fernandes, who turned budget flying into a lifestyle. Meanwhile, Jetstar Asia always felt like the side project of a foreign parent company. And that brings us to one of the key problems: identity. Jetstar Asia never truly felt Asian. It was structured like an Australian airline operating out of Singapore. Even their website design and marketing copy felt more like it was targeting Melbourne rather than Manila. Meanwhile, Scoot and AirAsia were dialing into local preferences and speaking the language both literally and culturally. Still, Jetstar Asia stuck around. For years, they operated regional routes between Singapore and cities like Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Manila, Jakarta, you name it. But even during their busiest years, they weren't leading the pack. Their fleet was relatively small, hovering between 18 and 20 aircraft at their peak, while AirAsia was scaling up to over 200 across the region. Their market share was respectable, but it was not dominant. And when you're in the low-cost game, volume is everything. Margins are razor thin. If you're not flying full planes as often as possible, you're bleeding cash. Then came COVID. When the pandemic hit, airlines worldwide hit the brakes, but Asian low-cost carriers were hit especially hard. The borders closed, tourism vanished, and business travel was gone. Jetstar Asia, already operating with limited scale and razor-thin profits, suddenly found itself grounded for months. Qantas itself slashed costs and restructured its business. Jetstar Asia survived, but barely. By 2023, as travel picked up again, most budget carriers in Asia were roaring back to life. AirAsia launched aggressive promos. Scoot resumed international routes. But Jetstar Asia didn't quite bounce back the same way. According to the Qantas Group, by mid-2024, it was still only flying about 70% as much as it did before COVID. And here's the real problem: it hadn't made a profit in years. So when Qantas made the announcement in July 2024 that it would be shutting Jetstar Asia down, the reasoning was cold but clear. The Singapore-based airline had not delivered a return on investment and continued to face structural cost disadvantages. That's corporate speak for it wasn't making money and it wasn't going to anytime soon. But let's dig into that a bit deeper. What exactly were these structural cost disadvantages? Well, one big factor was Singapore itself. It's a fantastic hub. It's modern, efficient, and strategically located. However, it's also really expensive. Operating costs for airlines based in Singapore are among the highest in the region. Labor, airport fees, aircraft maintenance, it all adds up. Jetstar Asia was competing against rivals like Vietjet, which operates from Vietnam with significantly lower overhead. AirAsia, based in Malaysia and Thailand, also has a far more cost-effective ecosystem. So while Jetstar was paying premium rates to park at Changi Airport, others were flying similar routes at a discount. Another key issue was how Jetstar Asia managed its fleet. Like many low-cost carriers, it operated Airbus A320s. It's reliable, efficient, and perfect for short-haul routes. But unlike its rivals, Jetstar didn't scale aggressively. AirAsia, for example, operated a massive fleet across the region with high-frequency routes, running its planes almost non-stop. That sheer volume helped it pull in more revenue, effectively offsetting razor-thin margins through scale. Jetstar, by contrast, took a slower, more cautious approach. With fewer planes and less route density, it missed out on similar cost advantages that came with scale. In a business where margins are razor-thin and efficiency is everything, that hesitation made a big difference. Then there's the network itself. Jetstar Asia had a pretty narrow reach. They focused mainly on short-haul regional routes, often flying into competitive and saturated markets. They didn't have the reach of a true regional titan. And unlike its parent company Qantas, Jetstar Asia didn't have a strong loyalty program or global alliances to fall back on. AirAsia had its big loyalty program. Scoot passengers could earn KrisFlyer miles through Singapore Airlines. Jetstar had little to keep customers coming back, especially when competitors were offering better prices and more perks. Ironically, one of Jetstar Asia's strengths, its ownership structure, also became a weakness. While having Qantas as a majority stakeholder gave Jetstar some financial backing and legitimacy, it also meant they were tied to decisions made thousands of kilometers away. Qantas needed to make its balance sheet look good, and after reviewing its portfolio, Jetstar Asia stuck out as a non-performing asset. So instead of investing more to try and turn it around, they pulled the plug. Now to be clear, this isn't the end of the Jetstar brand. Jetstar Australia is still flying. Jetstar Japan is still operational, but the Pan-Asian dream is effectively dead. Jetstar Pacific in Vietnam was already rebranded as Pacific Airlines in 2020, and now Jetstar Asia is exiting the stage. What started as a bold regional play ends as a quiet retreat. But what can we learn from this? First, regional expansion is hard, even for big players. You can't just parachute into Southeast Asia with an Aussie business model and expect it to stick. The low-cost market in Asia is hyper-competitive, price-sensitive, and dominated by brands that know how to speak to their customers, adapt quickly, and scale aggressively. Second, even good ideas can age poorly. When Jetstar Asia launched in 2004, it made sense. The market was ripe for disruption. But 20 years later, it's a very different game. Consumer expectations have evolved, costs skyrocketed, and COVID reshaped everything. And if your business can't keep up, it doesn't matter how strong your parent company is. Finally, Jetstar Asia's closure reminds us that aviation isn't just about flying planes, it's about running efficient, scalable, and adaptable businesses. It's not enough to be part of a global brand. You have to win locally. And in the case of Jetstar Asia, it couldn't quite take off where it mattered most. So next time you're browsing flights out of Singapore and you notice Jetstar missing from the list, you'll know it wasn't a sudden crash, but a slow, quiet descent that began years ago. A dream of regional domination, grounded by tough competition, structural costs, and the brutal economics of flying low cost in a high-stakes market. But what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and let's discuss. And if you enjoyed this story, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss out on more deep dives like this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay curious.